Am I the a-hole for causing a woman who badmouthed me at work to get fired? I kind of already know what people's answer to this would be, but I'm just asking to make sure. For backstory, I'm a 24 male, born and raised in a fairly small town, surrounded by even smaller towns. People from the surrounding towns come here to get their degrees/diplomas from our local university and college, because their towns don't have good options. My town is big enough to be a hotspot for the surrounding areas, but still small enough that most people know each other. In fact, many families know each other generationally. The situation. I work as an advisor at our local bank branch. About 2 months ago, a 23 female was hired as a clerk. She's from one of the surrounding towns and had just graduated from our local university a few months prior. For the first month, everything went well. She joined our friend circle and there were no issues whatsoever. About a month later, one day after work, she pulled me aside and asked me out on a date. I politely declined and reminded her that I was married. Most of my coworkers and I have known each other since high school, if not earlier. My wife was part of this same circle, and we've been together since we were 15. This topic had come up before, and I always wear my wedding band, so I found it odd that she asked me out, especially since there were other single guys in the office. But I brushed it off and thought that was the end of it. That happened on a Friday. On Monday, halfway through my shift, one of my other coworkers, 24 female, told everyone that the 23 female had claimed I pulled her aside, asked her out, and wouldn't take no for an answer. She also claimed I had started stalking her on Snapchat and Instagram. Here's the thing, my coworkers knew I didn't even have Snapchat or Instagram, and they knew how close my wife and I are, so they realized she was lying. However, there were a couple of coworkers who didn't know me as well and may have believed her. I told my coworkers not to confront her, and instead explained what actually happened. I told them to ignore her lies and just agree with whatever she said because I didn't want to escalate the situation. I figured she was just being childish and didn't know how to handle rejection. The escalation. About 2 weeks later, my dad called and said he needed to speak to me. When I went to my parents' house, he told me that a friend of his, who's a client at the bank, mentioned I had been stalking a girl at work. This client had heard it from the 23 female, who was now looking for another job and asking for his help. I explained the truth to my dad and decided I needed to put a stop to her lies. The next day, I explained everything to HR. Once I told HR that clients were getting involved, they took the matter seriously and opened an investigation. They interviewed me, my coworkers, and the 23 female. Everyone backed me up, and camera footage showed her pulling me aside, not the other way around. HR confronted her, and she tried to claim I was stalking her by showing them an Instagram account with my face on it. Here's the kicker. The photo she used was the only photo of me on one of my coworkers' profiles. She had created a fake account and sent herself messages to make it seem believable. HR fired her on the spot for spreading malicious rumors and disrupting the work environment. Since she was still in her probationary period, she didn't receive severance or any additional pay. Given the small town environment, news spread quickly. Her job prospects here are now non-existent. This is why I'm questioning whether I handled it the right way. On one hand, I'm relieved to have cleared my name. But on the other, I wonder if I should have confronted her directly instead of involving HR. Now for the top comments before reading the mini update. She decided to F around and found out, and deserved to be fired, not the a-hole. You also shouldn't feel bad about the backlash she's receiving. If you hadn't defended yourself, her lies could have permanently damaged your reputation in your town. She got what she deserved, and now you don't have to worry about her anymore. Not the a-hole. She actively tried to ruin your life and caused a huge hubbub in your workplace. You tried to ignore her, but she kept pushing. She's a psychopath, and appropriate workplace consequences were meted out. Fafo. You didn't get her fired. She got herself fired. Consider legal options if you think she'll keep bad-mouthing you everywhere. Slander and libel are both against the law, not the a-hole. It's possible that you live in a locality where many people proclaim great fondness for the 10 Commandments and favor displaying them in schools and courthouses. If so, she should be reminded that "thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor" was important enough to make the short list when the Almighty drew up the "these are my rules for you" starter kit. Therefore, her behavior is an offense against the law of humans and of multiple religions. And lies need to stop, and she needs to keep your name out of her mouth and off her keyboard. I don't think she will do it again, at least not to me, but I'll still speak to a lawyer friend of mine. Thank you very much for this advice. Mini update. Thank you everyone for the comments. As I mentioned in the first line of this post, I had a feeling I knew the answer, and all of the comments have reiterated the same, so I'm at peace now. As a lot of comments suggested, if not her, at some point HR would have heard about this and potentially punished me. Thank you all for helping me clear my conscience. I also agree, I should have gone to HR as soon as my coworkers told me the first time. I just gave her the benefit of the doubt. Lesson learned. This was the first time I've dealt with something like this, which is why I needed the advice/clarification. People are asking why the footage are still available weeks later. I'm going to make a wild guess that either those people haven't worked at a bank or they worked at one but did not find out about their footage storage policies. For security reasons, employees will generally not be informed of the exact storage policies. However, when a theft occurred at our branch 2 years ago, I am aware that they were able to pull up footage from 3 months prior. I don't know what kind of banks you guys are used to, but banks store security camera footage longer than most businesses. Each bank and each branch will have their own policies on how long they keep footage. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend if she wasn't always trying to get with my husband, her boyfriend wouldn't have left her? I, 27 female, have been best friends with Kira, 25 female, since we were little. We were neighbors, went to the same school, college, etc. She was my maid of honor when I married Rowan, 28 male, who we went to college with. At first, Kira had a big crush on him, but he started liking me. We slowly got closer, and I started liking him too. This was after Kira had told me she'd gotten over it and was dating another guy. But I still felt really guilty and didn't want to date him if it would hurt Kira. I asked her multiple times if she was okay with it, and she said she was, so I thought it was fine. Kira's been with her current boyfriend Adam, 27 male, for a year or so. However, over the last few months, she's been acting strange around Rowan. Whenever we'd hang out just the 3 of us, or even with Adam there, she'd always find a way to sit next to Rowan, laugh at everything he said, etc. At first, I didn't think much of it, because I knew that's kind of her personality, and her and Rowan are friends. But then she started always asking me if Rowan would be there before she came over, and if I said no, she'd often suddenly say she couldn't come. Sometimes she wouldn't show up even if I said he was there. Rowan also told me about a comment she made to him once, about how he was so patient for putting up with me being too tired to do anything with him now that I was pregnant, which I thought was weird. The odd behavior continued, but to be honest, the pregnancy has been keeping me too exhausted to dwell on it. Rowan seemed as friendly with Kira as always, but 2 days ago, our mutual friend Shay threw a dinner party. Rowan and I went, as did Kira and Adam. Kira got a bit tipsy, and she kept trying to sit with Rowan and touch him. He excused himself a few times, but she kept finding him. I tried to get her to back off a few times, and I was getting mad because this was crossing a line. She started slurring about how I stole Rowan from her. Thankfully, Adam was too busy talking to Shay's husband to hear this, but he definitely saw Kira's actions. The next afternoon, I was at Shay's again with some friends when Kira showed up. She was crying because Adam had broken up with her that day, saying he didn't think they were going to work out. Everyone was consoling her, but I was just kind of sitting there. I couldn't help but feel like she brought this upon herself. She asked me, "Aren't you going to say something?" So I said, maybe Adam wouldn't have left you if you weren't trying to get with Rowan all the time. Some of our other friends were shocked to hear this and got mad at Kira. Others were angry with me, saying Kira was just really friendly with everyone and that was a horrible accusation to make. Kira was upset, saying she couldn't believe I thought that of her and maybe we really weren't that close. She left in tears, and I left soon after too. Now I don't know. Maybe I was wrong. Kira had been drinking at the dinner party and might not have meant what she said, and the other stuff could have been nothing. Maybe this was too harsh to say to her after a breakup, and we could have talked privately, not in front of our friends. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Well, not entirely. Yes, it was kind of rude to say that after she had been dumped, but she'd been acting this way for a long time, to the point where even Rowan was uncomfortable, but she still persisted. Getting drunk didn't help, and I bet Adam did hear her say you stole Rowan from her. From my point of view, she's clearly been jealous this whole time. She hasn't moved on and has only tried to get closer. Rowan also brought up that weird comment she made about you being too tired to do anything. That's not a normal thing to say to your best friend's husband, even as a joke. It's messed up, not the a-hole. I don't know what the rules are in relationships, and they are probably different for every couple, but at a certain point, should he have shut it down himself? Kira's trying to sleep with your husband. She's not your friend at all. You are not the a-hole for saying that, but you are the a-hole for allowing her to make your husband uncomfortable by sexually harassing him. If one of your female friends told you that another friend's husband was constantly touching her, flirting with her, and making personal comments about her sex life, what would you say? Start standing up for your husband. Yes, she was letting her husband be sexually harassed. She's the a-hole for that. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not recalling my dog when she chased my neighbors off of my property? I, 30 female, have 4 dogs, but the one this story is about is a 4-year-old Rottweiler named Bella. A few months ago, new renters moved next door, and things have been unpleasant to say the least. The neighbors are always screaming and fighting late into the night, and the men in the home have a habit of always trying to talk to me, or just watching me when I'm outside. This is not done in a friendly way, and it has made me feel very uncomfortable. I'm a single woman living alone, and our police force isn't the best. So I just keep my head down, hoping they'll move out soon. The other night, around 11 p.m., I was outside with my dogs in the backyard. My neighbors have a chain-link fence, but I have no fence along my property except for the part that separates their property from mine. One of my dogs was on a leash, but the other 3 are completely trained off leash and do not leave the yard. I know some people may not agree with that, but I live in the countryside, and also my dogs have never run off. One of the women who lives next door, for some reason, decided to enter my yard because she wanted to just play with my puppies. Bella growled and walked closer to me, and I asked the woman to please leave. But she just kept telling me it was fine and ignored what I was saying. One of the men decided to join her, and they came further onto my property, which led to Bella barking. After a few moments of them continuing, Bella chased after them. She stopped running the second she hit the property line and went inside with me immediately after. Now these neighbors keep making comments about not feeling safe with their kids and saying I should have called my dog back because they weren't a threat. I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but I also don't want the area to think my dogs are dangerous, especially with the stigma against Rottweilers. I also don't want to stir up unnecessary drama when it's already difficult living next to these people. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before the mini update. Not the a-hole. The neighbor came onto your property without permission and thought she could just pet your dogs. Bella had every right to chase someone who wasn't invited off. If you're worried about your neighbors, get cameras and place them in front and backyard. Cameras are in the plan, but I'm paycheck to paycheck right now, unfortunately. If you're between paychecks, you can still document any harassment and interactions. Write down any incidents and date them, including anything that happens with your dogs. Inspect your front and backyard for anything that's different. Make sure you date everything. Not the a-hole. Your neighbors need to stay in their own yard. That was my thought process when it was happening, but I know that things can be different depending on the breed of the dog. I know for a fact Bella wouldn't have hurt them unless they had tried to hurt me, but I didn't know if that mattered or not. Mini update. Thanks everyone for the advice. I've called a friend who has agreed to come over tonight, and he will crash in my spare room until I feel safe. I'm going to contact the police tomorrow and make a report, as well as get a runner and a cheap camera as soon as I get paid. I'll update if anything changes. But I hope you all have a fantastic night, and thank you for the advice. Last story. Am I the a-hole for declining to invite a woman who has called herself a total klepto into my home? I, 30 female, joined a women's social club 6 months ago because I've been struggling to make friends after relocating to a new city. It took me a while to warm up to the group and connect with people I actually had things in common with. I had to wade through a lot of Botox parties and boozy brunches to find activities that interested me. But eventually I did, and I started attending group events fairly often. I spent most of my time with the women who enjoy reading, doing crafts, baking, sky watching, etc. Among these women is one whom I'll call Andrea, who has repeatedly made comments about being a total klepto. I think she says this to seem cool to others in the group. I reached out to some of the women I see regularly at these events and invited them over to my place to watch a TV show we'd been discussing and do crafts. They were excited and agreed to come. Unfortunately, Andrea found out, presumably because someone asked her if she was going and reached out to ask if she was invited. I thought about it for a bit and then told her no, explaining that I only had so much space at home. She didn't believe me and pressed me for the real reason, saying I thought we got along, which, yes, is true. I told her I wasn't comfortable inviting a self-proclaimed kleptomaniac into my home. I explained that I've worked hard for what I have, and it wouldn't make sense to knowingly invite someone who brags about stealing. She replied quietly, okay, and then added, "You're painting me out to be some horrible criminal when you don't even know anything about me." I told her that her being proud to call herself a klepto was all I needed to know. She responded by calling me a high school mean girl and ableist. I have no idea where that came from. Unfortunately, this situation has spilled over into the group, which is frustrating. But what surprises me the most is that so many people are defending her and telling me I'm out of touch and take things too literally. Am I? Not the a-hole. Being a thief isn't the same as being a kleptomaniac or a klepto. One of the key factors in diagnosing kleptomania, a legitimate and rare mental health disorder, is the emotional roller coaster around theft. A kleptomaniac experiences intense shame and wouldn't casually tell strangers they've stolen something. Andrea is the ableist one here, for using kleptomania as an excuse to justify her poor behavior. I know some people say things like, I'm being so OCD, when they just mean they're being fastidious. I'm not well versed in kleptomania, but I thought her comments might have been along those lines. It probably was, but it still makes her the ableist, not you. She's not a klepto, she's a thief, and a proud one at that. She's also rude. When you said there wasn't enough room, she should have accepted that answer. She isn't owed entry to your property. Not the a-hole. I had a girl in my sorority described herself as a self-diagnosed klepto who just couldn't help herself when she saw something she liked, whether it was in a store, on campus, or something another person owned. Once she took something, she considered it her property, and heaven forbid you try to get it back. I refused to associate with her outside of required meetings. I never let her near my purse, my dorm, or my car. She cried and called me a bully. People like this always play the victim. I'm glad you're keeping your boundaries.